Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. Well, this is our map day where we get down to the business of the topic that we're covering today, and I will let Victoria get us started.
Okay, guys, so we've talked about time. We've talked about different ways that you can use timelines, timeline tools for plotting, ways of moving your character and your reader through a story. We've covered that pretty nicely. The other side of that coin, however, when we're talking about the chronotope, which is time and space, is space. So what's a simple way of looking at space in your story, and how can you bring that eagle eye to each piece of the story to make sure that you're delivering the kind of story and message that you want to? I'm going to give you a couple of tools. We're going to look at two scenarios, and we're going to look at it through 5 ways of lenses, if you will. The two scenarios are indoor and outdoor. It's a simple thing, but most people never stop to think about why they're making the choices they're making about where they situate their scenes. So let's just break it down. In the first case, whenever you're approaching writing a scene, ask yourself, why am I choosing the setting that I'm choosing? For example, in the way that I open my novel, it opens in the basement archive room of a museum. I wanted the atmosphere to have that kind of sequestered, closed-in museum quality. The lighting is kind of low, and it lends itself to the experience that comes out of that scene. It was very intentional. So why are you choosing the settings for your scenes that you're choosing? Let's continue along the road of indoor. Well, if you choose an indoor scene, that's going to dictate some very specific things. For example, in my novel, the indoor scene dictates that you don't have to use your big outdoor voices, right? Because you're in the basement archive room of a museum. So the people are speaking quietly in their quiet voices. Now, how would you break that up? What if somebody yelled all of a sudden? Boom, now you've got some conflict, you've got some tension, you have something introduced that breaks that baseline of quiet. That's how you start to look at using settings in your scenes. So let's continue down that road. We've used audio. What about the lighting? If you're indoor, the lighting is generally controlled. It's not like outside where the clouds are passing across the sun and the atmosphere is changing. None of that. You've got control on the inside. So maybe you've got that buzzing overhead school lighting. Yucko. Maybe you've got warm ambient lamps that are providing the lighting. Two very different ways of controlling the setting, but very impactful for your reader if you use the space. So the way it looks, the way it sounds. What if there's a smell? If you're indoors and there's some funky smell, that's going to set your reader on edge wondering what's going on and why it is that way. What if it's a very sterile environment? That sends a very different message to your reader. These are all things you can control to build that immersive story. So we'll leave it with those 3 for the indoor. Now let's flip the coin and go outdoors. Very different. As I said, if the lighting is fluctuating, maybe it begins as a sunny day and you start your scene there perhaps in a pasture or a big yard. And over the course of the scene, the clouds roll in, it becomes very dark and menacing and completely changes the atmosphere. You're communicating a ton of information to your reader just in how you play with the lighting outdoors. So keep that in mind. What about the sounds? If your people are outdoors and maybe you throw in some wind, they're going to have to use their outdoor voices because they're outside in the wind. So again, you're giving your reader a different experience from just controlled, quiet conversation or dialogue. You're adding that bigger element that again expands the atmosphere for the reader as they experience that scene and what happens. So those are the things I want you to think about as you start to look at your scenes, look at your settings, and make some choices about why am I doing what I'm doing, and is there a more effective, a more impactful, or a more engaging way to toggle those choices around so that I bring that reader into the story and give them the effect that I want to. I'm going to leave you there for today. So play with your scenes and settings, play with indoor versus outdoor, and see how you can manipulate the 5 senses to grab your reader. Kathleen?
Oh boy, that sounds wonderful. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. And it contrasts rather strongly with the character traits that we always deal with here, which are oftentimes things that are going on inside your character's head, but not always. Because Victoria just took us through some scenes, indoors versus outdoors, what if we take the character that has trustworthiness in the wing position? Okay, we're going to take specifically the villain character. This villain character is aware of trustworthiness. Oh, he's not got it, mind you. He doesn't even aspire to it, but he's aware of it as a tool in his toolbox. And he is going to try to hoodwink, trick, cajole, charm some other member of your story into believing that he is to be trusted. So now you're going to be thinking not only of your time and your setting and your indoors and your outdoors, what kind of a setting would your villain choose to make himself seem trustworthy? Would he choose an indoor setting with dim light where he could put a gentle smile on his face and everything will look soft and charming? Will that help him sell himself as being trustworthy? Or would he be out there in the hiking in the woods, wearing some sturdy shoes and taking some big strides? See, I'm an outdoors man. Ah, outdoors men can always be trusted. Uh, if I can get by with all these blisters on my feet. So that's your guy, your villain in the wing. But where does trustworthiness fall for most of our characters? Well, I hope for the most part it's just right smack in the base position. And where do we have stories such like that, where the majority of our characters are just, they're trustworthy. That's who they are. They're just solid, trustworthy people. It's just plain in the base. But trustworthy has a different aspect to it as well, because trustworthy is also somewhat in the eyes of the beholder. And it takes a certain amount of time to demonstrate trustworthiness before your character will be treated as being trustworthy. You could have a very young character who actually has trustworthy very much in the base. Most people are going to look and say, teen, kid, better keep an eye on the kid. And it will take some time before he can prove that he has trustworthiness in the base. Or again, being that he is a teen, maybe his trustworthiness is a little bit iffy. Maybe it's more right smack in the rudder. And not really so much that the kids are going to say, gee, am I going to be trustworthy today or not trustworthy today? No, it's more a matter of he's been entrusted with something, but oh, look, a pretty girl. Or, oh, look, skateboarding. And off he goes. And that is the very sort of a typical view that people tend to have of teens that would make someone want to keep an eye on that teenager. Can he really be trusted to carry out the responsibility? So, when do we have trustworthiness in that rudder position where it's an honest to goodness decision? Ooh, that's pretty scary. When someone would be toying with abandoning being trustworthy. That would be a pretty hard thing. It'd have to be something really seriously going on. Did he feel betrayed? Did he feel like he was just had the whole world dumped on him and he just can't handle it all? Why? That's a really scary one, but it's got a lot of depth and drama because it means a great deal if someone is going to abandon being trustworthy. Now, then there's the goofball who has trustworthy up there in the pinnacle position. Huh? What? What does that mean? Never thinks about it. Never what? Oh, look at that. Oh, that's cute. I wonder if I could slip that in my pocket. No one would notice. What? Where are you coming from? This was a person who's had some kind of weird upbringing, if that's all. Everything's all just no sense of trustworthiness whatsoever. But it's possible amongst your characters. Your villains are mostly going to be in the wing, and most of your characters will be in the base. And then what does it mean to be in the anchor? Because that's usually most people when you're talking about your characters, they're usually, if they're solid, they're in the anchor. But what does it mean then to fill in that missing position? Well, I would say that someone probably has trustworthiness in the anchor if previously it was in the maybe in the wing at the start of your story. He just wasn't getting through. He maybe had a bad upbringing, was a little bit loose with the fingers. And now he
Mm.
went through a stage in life where he recognized that he didn't want to be that way. He had the rudder decision and he made the choice. I'm not gonna touch anything that doesn't belong to me. And now he's got it set in and he's starting to lock it in. And that's where you'd find it in the anchor position. But of course, since you're writing a story, you're going to want to challenge them because that's what makes the story exciting and interesting. So I hope from all of this, you'll be able to see how you can utilize trustworthiness as you build your stories. Victoria, do you have anything to add?
Oh, as always, just fantastic. It never ceases to amaze me the ways that we find to take a story element or a character element and just turn it over. As writers, that is our superpower. That's our commitment to the reader to provide them with the most engaging, best story that we can possibly write. Our first job is to look at it from every angle, turn it over, challenge those characters, set up those scenes, and drive that reader through the story. I'm just so excited at seeing the options that we have and the things that we're discovering as we work through these modules. But most importantly, if people wanted to find us and maybe join us, where would they go?
They would come to LiLLiPub.org. Oh my gosh, is the place ever buzzing? We are having so many great discussions over there as we all get to work through Victoria's book and now her first newsletter that's out. And they're the conversations are stimulating, the questions are being answered. And yes, Victoria, tell us some more about your challenge for the month that you brought to us all.
Don't forget, March is our put it in the blender and scramble everything up experience collection challenge. So what we're doing is everyone can participate. You don't need any special credentials. You don't have to have written anything. This is simply creating one note card each day for the month of March and posting it over in the Experience Collection Cafe. And all your note card has to contain is an experience, an observation, maybe an idea, something you're noodling with, something that you've noticed. It can be absolutely anything from your daily life. And then the challenge is to scramble that up with a character trait. So for example, maybe you notice a long-suffering, sweet man holding the door for this woman who's taking forever and not even considering the fact that he's been standing there forever, and he is dug into constancy as a character trait. That's all you got to do. Find that experience in your daily life, capture it, and then see if you can plug that into a character trait as a bonus. Even if you can't, still capture your experiences and share them, because we're all learning from each other and getting little windows into the kinds of things that we all experience that can be used for our writing. So come and join us and post some note cards.
And also enjoy the note cards that are posted there from your other Lilligans, because there's a good collection going and you can get some great ideas for your stories right here in LiLLiPub.org. And then join us on Saturdays, because on Saturdays we gather under Victoria's direction and you get to submit some of your writing and get some fantastic critique on your writing. All this for just a crazy $8 a month. You can't imagine a better way to spend $8. So we'll see you over in LiLLiPub. Be sure to say hi. We'll say hi right back. See you there. Bye-bye.